Okay, we're going to move on now a little bit more into the trigonometry portion of this course. This is a brief lesson, but my goodness, is it important. We just finished Pythagoras' theorem, so in my mind, I have to move ahead saying that you have mastered Pythagoras' theorem. If you haven't, I would strongly recommend that you do not progress in this lesson. You need to ensure that you can use Pythagoras' theorem, at will to solve for a missing side in a right angle triangle. Anyway, we're going to move on here. As we get closer using trigonometry, it is crucial to be able to label our sides. Okay? So when labeling or naming triangles, we often use letters to identify parts of the triangles. I'm just going to go on. This is not so important, but I'll just show you. Sides are always labeled with lowercase letters. So for example, this might be little a, this might be b, this might be little c. Vectors or angles are usually with uppercase. Okay, I'll just put upper. Well, I can put it underneath uppercase letters. But the point is, there is a relationship here, and this is going to help you if you go on in math. You see how this side is little a? The angle that's opposite of that actually becomes angle capital A. And if this is B, this is the angle across, so that would be angle capital B, and of course this would be angle capital C. Just so you know, there is a relationship where we use upper and lower case letters, but they actually remain kind of consistent, so you know if you have angle A, the opposite side is little a, and if you have angle B, the side opposite is little b. Okay. I'll keep moving on here. I'm going to erase that. Now, we have talked about the hypotenuse, but I'm just going to do that one more time. See, the hypotenuse is the foundation. The hypotenuse is always across from the right angle. Another way of saying it, you could say the 90-degree angle. And it is always the longest side. If you ever somehow come along a calculation where the hypotenuse is not the longest side, it's actually kind of cool. You'll get some error messages. Your calculator won't know what to do with itself. But the hypotenuse must be across or opposite from the 90-degree angle, and it has to be the longest side. So you've got to make sure that you can label the hypotenuse no matter what. Now, move along. The sides of a right angle triangle can also be labeled in relation to a specific angle, the reference angle. This is essentially the perspective or where you are looking from. In trigonometry, the three labels for the sides of a triangle are the opposite, adjacent, and the hypotenuse. Now, we don't have to do too much here because you see the hypotenuse? The hypotenuse will never change. The hypotenuse is always directly across from the right angle. That's great. That's nice and easy. To figure out the opposite or adjacent, we must use what's called the reference angle. So, in the triangles, circle the reference angle. Notice we use the symbol of, well, this is basically we just use this as an angle symbol, okay? Which, it's called theta. You can call it the angle symbol or theta. It doesn't really matter. So what we're going to do, just so you can know here, so let's circle the, let's find the reference angle. So in the first triangle, this would be your reference angle right there. They gave you this angle. There's something to do with that angle. Now, I'm sorry that's just kind of a little bit skewed off here, but this would be your reference angle, and in this case, this would be your reference angle. Now, label the sides of the triangle in relation to the given angles as opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse. So here's how I do this. You see how we have, I'm just going to go back up here, we have opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse. I use, for the hypotenuse, I put an H. For adjacent, I put an A. And for opposite, I put an O. Okay, so let's go to the first triangle. The first triangle, everyone can label the hypotenuse. That's not a big deal. The hypotenuse can be done easily. Actually, we can do that for all of these triangles. You just find that 90-degree angle and go opposite. Now what you have to do is, after you've labeled your hypotenuse, you go to the reference angle. And here is the rule. The side across from the reference angle is always your opposite. So if you look right here, the side across is always my opposite. I go across, that's my opposite. I go across, That's my opposite. And the best part about this is there's only 3 sides and 3 choices. So by default, we know what our adjacent side is. So life is really easy now. I want you to make sure that you know how to do that. Please understand, you must know you start with the hypotenuse, which is across from the 90-degree angle. Then find the reference angle. The side that is opposite of that is called the opposite. By default, you can now name your adjacent angle. Finally, I just want to say that the ability, if we're going to move on in trigonometry, the ability to be successful in trigonometry does depend on this. You must be able to name your sides. Okay, well, we're going to go over here to just this page really, really quick. It says, they just want you to write a definition of what these are. So the hypotenuse, how would you find this? The hypotenuse is across from right or 90-degree angle. And the other thing that we know is it's always the longest side. Now, the opposite, what do we know about the opposite? The opposite is always across from reference angle. And you know what? If I'm numbering this, you should always identify the hypotenuse first. Then you should label the opposite. And the adjacent will be the only remaining side. So, and that you would label number 3. I'm going to give you some practice with this. I know this has been short, but my goodness, this is so crucial to your success with trigonometry.